This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not driving my sweet AMC Pacer through the car wash, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World. You missed a spot.
God is Rainier Avenue Radio World, your favorite community radio station. We're putting out all kind of inputs for you in your community. So come on and listen to us and tune us in. Get on our Facebook, Instagram, and all. As we're doing it right here for you in your community. Rainier Avenue Radio World, and God is an inspiration of gospel music. Also, we're doing a lot of different things in your community. We give out free food. We give out a lot of things in the community. We do a lot of shows. We do a lot of things on the sports part, and we want you to come on out and tune us in and come to the community, and we do a lot of things in your community. So make sure you go to our website, Rainier Avenue Radio World, and also go to the God Is website and look us up and see what we do in your community, something maybe you might like. So come on by and check us out from 11 to 2. Free food giveaway.
What's on your heart? Are you exhausted at the lack of progress for people of color in business, politics, and life? This is Cindy Bright, the host of Heartbeat Radio. Each week, we explore this heart condition in the country that is affecting you and me. We have real conversations about what's necessary for change. It's time to change this dialogue. Will you join this Heartbeat weekly, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Rainier Avenue Radio?
November is American Indian Heritage Month, so please join Rainier Avenue Radio World to celebrate all month long the history, the contributions, and the accomplishments of our first Americans. Again, please stay tuned to Rainier Avenue Radio World to celebrate and honor American Indians during American Indian Heritage Month.
You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World. Don't forget to log on www.rainieravenue radio.world.
Ay Pilipino, ang dugo'y maharlika. Likas sa aking puso at hikain kay handa.
Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Sama po kayo naroroon. Ito po ang Fil-Am Radio, broadcasting live every Tuesday afternoon from 1 o'clock to 2:30. Seattle time po yan, to the magic of StreamYard and the facilities of Rainier Avenue Radio World dito po sa Seattle, Washington State, USA. Ako po si Kuya Bert Caoili at ang aking magandang co-host na nasa Australia.
Good afternoon, Kuya Bert. Good afternoon, Daniel and Seattle. Good morning, Philippines and Australia. Ito po si Mal Salvador. Kayo po ang nanonood sa Fil-Am Radio Show in Rainier Avenue Radio in Seattle, Washington, USA. Samahan niyo po kami ngayon. Salamat po.
Salamat din, Miles. Ang producer po natin ay si Daniel Bells of Rainier Avenue Radio World. Alam nyo, yung programa po natin, our program, Fil-Am Radio, is internet-based. So you could listen live now. Saan man po kayo naroroon, wherever you are in the world. Just log on to www.rainieravenueradio.world or on YouTube. Hanapin lamang, just search for Fil-Am Radio. Our episode today is 221. Ang ating show po is video recorded by our producer, so you can also watch our show later. Halimbawa, bukas po, Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Uulitin po natin yung programa natin, kaya lang hindi na live. Anyway, meron din po tayong mga nilalagay ng ating kaibigang co-host Miles sa kanyang blog, Miles Salvador, o sa aking Facebook page, yung Bert Angel or Bert Caoili. Ang broadcast medium po natin is Taglish or Tagalog English so that our show can be understood o at least makakaintindi na sila ng konti sa ating programa. Tagalog English, Taglish po. So for now, just relax and enjoy our show because we have a very special guest today. So just hang in there, relax, enjoy the show. And para malaman naman ninyo, especially those who are joining us for the first time, our program always starts with a prayer and ends with a prayer. So sabayan niyo po kami sa aking maikling prayer. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, as we prepare for today's broadcast, we ask you to bless our friends, supporters, and those we care deeply for, especially those who are watching our program right now. Where there is joy, give them continued joy. Where there is pain, give them your peace and mercy. Where there is self-doubt, release a renewed confidence. Where there is a need, fulfill their needs. Above all, thank you for giving us friends and family to share the blessing that you have bestowed on us each and every day here on earth. May love, humility, forgiveness, and peace reign in our hearts from this day forward. In Jesus' holy name, Amen.
Amen.
And normally do, after the prayer, Miles, it's all yours. Ang ating pambungad na awitin, our opening song.
Our opening song is Ikaw ang Mahal Ko by Pilita Corrales.
Ikaw ang mahal ko, ikaw ang mahal kong tunay na tunay. Ang laging panaginip ko'y tanging ikaw. Ngunit ang totoo madalas mong mapag-alinlanganan. Ang puso kong tapat sa pagsintang di mo alam. Ang pag-ibig kung lubusan kay hirap maunawaan. Sa puso ko ang pagsintang dalisay, laging wagas kahit mapagpintangan. Ikaw ang mahal ko, ikaw ang mahal kong tunay na tunay. Sa puso kong tapat sa pagsintang di mo alam. Ikaw ang mahal ko, ikaw ang mahal kong tunay na tunay. Ang laging panaginip ko'y tanging ikaw. Ngunit ang totoo madalas mong mapag-alinlanganan. Ang puso kong tapat sa pagsintang di mo alam. Ang pag-ibig kung lubusan kay hirap maunawaan. Sa puso ko ang pagsintang dalisay, laging wagas kahit mapagpintangan. Ikaw ang mahal ko, ikaw ang mahal kong tunay na tunay. Sa puso kong tapat sa pagsintang di mo alam. Ang pag-ibig kung lubusan kay hirap maunawaan. Sa puso ko ang pagsintang dalisay, laging wagas kahit mapagpintangan. Ikaw ang mahal ko, ikaw ang mahal kong tunay na tunay. Sa puso kong tapat sa pagsintang di mo patan. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, di mo alam.
Iyan po ang Ikaw ang Mahal Ko. In English, You Are My Love by Pilita Corrales.
I always love Pilita, Miles. Talaga naman,
Yeah.
lalo pag kumakanta yan, paliyad-liyad pa yan.
Oh, Irving Mendoza. Hi again, Kuya Bert and Miles. Happy Tuesday. Thank you, Irving, for watching. Thank you.
And now, as I said, we have a very special guest, very reverent to all Filipinos, Filipino-Americans. Ang ating pong special guest, si Dorothy Cordova. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Yay!
Oh, there she is.
Thanks.
Hi,
Auntie,
Dorothy.
I was so worried that you might not be able to be on the show, visually. But are you doing are you now at home or at your office?
I'm at my office.
Oh, very good. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. I
Yeah.
thought that the internet would have been a problem for you, but I guess Damien solved the problem, right?
Yeah, Damien came and saved the day.
Anyway, mga kaibigan, ito po si Dorothy Cordova.
How do you do?
Was our very
Hi.
well-known in Filipino community. And I'm so glad that you could join us today, Dorothy, because a lot of Filipinos, Filipino-Americans, especially those of the younger set, may not know very well our, I would say, history. And you and Uncle Fred, you have been, I would say, the first Filipino that I have really admired, because you have been following and uplifting the Filipinos here in the United States, especially here in the West Coast. And of course, after all of these years, you have, so many chapters, and I am remiss to say that I have not been involved very much with your organization, which now I'm retired, maybe I could devote some time. And I figured, maybe now's the time to get Dorothy on our show. So here you are, Dorothy. Thank you very much. So Miles, I'd like you to meet
Hi.
Dorothy Cordova.
How do you do, Miles?
Hi,
From
Dorothy.
Australia, right.
Actually, I put a very nice, beautiful photo of yours in my reminder last Monday. Monday here. In my reminder in Facebook, in Kuya Bert's Angels and Bert's Angels. Yeah. And by the way, Dorothy, Irving Mendoza said, hi, Dorothy, good day to you. And Efren Pasqua, nice to see you, Auntie Dorothy. That's Efren Pasqua. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, introduce yourself, Auntie, to most of our audience who may not really know you, or may not know what your activities are, what you are doing for the community. So go ahead. It's all yours for now.
Well, actually, maybe I should start out to say that I'm almost 90 years old, so I've been around for a long time.
Wow! Oh my God! You look awesome.
My parents came to the United States when the Philippines was still part of the United States. My parents came not as aliens, but they came here as nationals, American nationals. So they didn't need a passport. My father came in 1919. He was supposed to go to school. And my mom came in 1928. She was a school teacher in the Philippines, and she was supposed to continue school, but she got married to my dad. Make a long story short, it used to take 3 weeks to go from the Philippines to the United States by boat. And
wow.
what happened is that as American nationals, anybody from the Philippines could come to the U.S. as long as they paid their boat fare, or if they went to Hawaii, if the people owning the plantations, they paid their boat fare. So on the 3 weeks over that my dad and his two cousins had, they changed their mind where they were going to settle. They were scheduled to go, and I didn't find this out till many years later. They were supposed to go to Chicago, Illinois, to go to school. But on the way over, my dad decided he wanted to work, and he promised to help his cousin. He put his cousin through the University of Washington. And my dad then, a 19-year-old man, actually he was 18 when he came, he turned 19 here, became a businessman after a while. And but that was the case. A lot of these young men who were coming over, they had great dreams. And you have to understand, too, what was really interesting about the Filipinos coming over in the early 20th century. They weren't just single men. There were also the war brides. The first Asian war brides, American Asian war brides, were the Filipinas because of the Spanish-American War. People forget this. So in FANHS, the Filipino-American National Historical Society, we push it. We were the first war brides, Asian war brides, okay. Not only that, other people coming over were the pensionados later, those who were supported by the government, and then people like my dad and his cousins who were going to be self-supporting students. Then you also had families coming over, little bits. But what's interesting about the state of Washington was one of the crew of 40 men came to Seattle around 1903, 1904, and they laid the cable between Seattle and Alaska, the telephone cable. What's interesting is these were part of the same group of men who were taught by the Americans to lay cable between Manila and the western part of Luzon, so the Americans could keep track of on Aguinaldo. And it was a case where they were going to find out what they were doing so they could defeat them. So that was a time when that's the history that a lot of us really should know. So here are these Filipinos who are doing that, then come to the United States in 1903. And they're the ones who helped lay the cable between the lower 48 and Alaska. But the interesting thing is there were women who were coming here too. And we found out that there was one woman who became very famous later on. She was a stowaway on a ship. She didn't have the money to come. And so in the early 20s, she supported herself by going to Alaska, and she worked in the canneries. Then she came back and she attended. We have pictures of her sitting with all the students, all dressed up very nicely on campus. After she graduates in the 20s, she goes back to the Philippines. She gets her degree, I guess, in home economics. I guess during World War II, she created something that I'd never heard of, never tasted yet, but it was called banana ketchup. She was the creator of, and that's down in history. She was the one who created, she graduated from the University of Washington, where your kids graduated for. That's just a little sidelight. So actually, when we do the history of Filipinos in the United States, we go even beyond after Spanish-American War. There was, when I was starting FANHS, or getting it, I was hearing about this woman in Louisiana who was in contact with old families there. And these old families were mestizo, most of them, and they were living in the bayous of Louisiana. They were men, they were the descendants of men who had jumped ship from the Spanish galleons and created villages, fishing, shrimping villages in the bayous of Louisiana. And this woman's name is Marina Espina. And so when I started FANHS, of course, I didn't start FANHS yet. When I was doing an oral history around the country, she was one of the people that we should get. And when she started to show us pictures that were taken back in the 1800s of 3-generation families already. This is about the time of the the Civil War. And so we were thinking, oh my God, this goes back way far. But then later on, through FANHS, through research that some of our people, especially one of our other late trustees, our early trustees, found there were records, because all on ships, the captain has to keep a log, and there was a log on 1587, October 18, the landing of a Manila galleon somewhere around the lower part of California. And they sent us ashore a landing party to secure water and whatever food they could get. And in the landing party, of course, there was some soldiers, but Indios Luzones, actually from the Philippines. And they go ashore and they meet some of the local natives, and there was a skirmish that occurred. And one of the Indios Luzones was mortally wounded. So the landing party flees back to the ship, and the captain writes this all down. And so we, in the Filipino-American National Historical Society, cites this as the earliest documentation of our people here in the continental United States. Now, there could have been earlier times, but then there was no documentation. And what I'm trying to say is the history of us being people like us, my parents, the Philippines is my homeland, okay, my fatherland or motherland. And anyway, we've been here a long time, one way or another. We do know that people jump ship, and there was a time when there was no boundary between Mexico and what is California. And so the Filipinos, okay, here's another thing that's rather interesting. During one of our conferences, Eloisa Bora, who was the one who found out about the captain's documentation of the first arrival, or the first documentation, she comes to our conference in Louisiana, and she says that she found out in her research that during the early travels across the Pacific Ocean, the Spaniards also had Filipino women who were used for obvious reasons. By the time they arrived in North America, they were pregnant. They were used chattel. And if they're left ashore. So this leaves you to think that with the people who jumped ship and tried to escape the Spaniards, and the women who were left behind, pregnant, how many of their direct descendants are now living in Mexico?
I'll be there.
It's a question, There's all it goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah. Auntie, you are truly amazing. Auntie, you are truly amazing that you have such good memories. You know? For me, I couldn't even remember last week what happened.
It's really interesting because a lot of people think that history in school is boring, but to me, it was never. As long as you don't just do dates, and things like that, you do people. And that's the whole thing, because and maybe I should explain to you, the reason I started FANHS, okay, and nothing ever happens because you plan to do a thing. Things happen because it happens. And you have to understand, I was born here in the United States. I'm the first person in my family born in the United States. I had an older brother, and he was born in the Philippines, though he should have been born here because my parents were married here. But my mom decides to go back to the Philippines to give birth to her firstborn. And by virtue of that, my brother in 1934 becomes an alien. And he didn't know that till many years later when he tried to come back into this country and was told he was an alien. So the thing is, everything that we talk about, in history that the old timers experience, my generation, which is those of us in our late 70s, 80s, 90s, we experience the same thing our parents experienced, discrimination. It was really This is the land of opportunity, the land of milk and honey, or so my parents thought until they arrived here. And they found out that in the beginning it may have been okay, but afterwards people just, they judged us not on what we were, but how we looked. And with my parents and their peers, it was a double whammy, not only how they looked, but how they sounded. And so, which is all these things, what I'm talking about. I taught class. I mean, can't do this in a minute and a half. But when we do the history of Philippines and the United States, for me, doing this goes way, way back. We were raised here, I was raised. And at that time, all over the United States, people of color, in Seattle, we were pretty much ghettoized. We were restricted to certain areas where we could live. In some senses, that was a bad thing, but in some ways, it was good because we were people like us, and I didn't feel bad until sometimes I went out of my comfort zone. But we all lived together, and we all socialized together. In those days, not only in Seattle, but in many other places where Filipinos were restricted with other people of color or poor whites, it was a true sense of community. We went to school together, went to church together, socialized, even married each other. And so that was the community that I was raised in, where we called everybody uncle, even though they weren't our uncle or auntie. The kids were our cousins, so they weren't our cousins. And we knew each other. That was a different time. We understood what was happening outside. And so when we were teenagers, we started a group, my brother did, here in Seattle, started a group called Filipino Catholic Youth. And we were pretty much, we did things on our own because the adults weren't paying attention. We put on dances, did all these things, put on programs. We were just kids. We were in high school. After we graduated from college, everybody was getting married, and some of the men had gone off to war, the Korean War now. They came back and they wanted, some of the men who were teenagers with us approached my husband and said, could we start another club like the old FCY? Because some of our kids, by this time we're all having children, they said that some of the kids feel lost. They're not accepted in your mainstream organizations. So I think there must have been around 15 couples started an organization called the Filipino Youth Activities here in Seattle. And believe it or not, what it was is it wasn't historical. It was actually, we wanted to teach the kids that they were just as good as everybody else. But at the same, so we were trying to lift their spirits, because when you live in a ghetto and you feel discrimination, you feel that you're second class. So it was very important for us who experienced that our children, the younger kids, didn't have the same kind of problems we did. But at the same time, we tried to harken back to our parents' culture. We were American, okay? I mean, in those days, we jitterbugged and we did all those crazy things. And we were American. We ate hamburgers, and at home we ate Filipino food. And the big joke was, at home we were Filipino. We walked out the door, we were American, but we weren't accepted as Americans.
Yeah, Auntie.
Yes.
Auntie, let me interrupt you for a brief time, because we're gonna go to our first news break.
Sure.
And after that, we'll continue. But that was wonderful. It's so interesting. I don't know much about it. Okay, Danielle, it's time for our...
Before we go to station break, just quick. I'll do it later.
Yeah, all right.
Welcome to the coronavirus pandemic. I'll take coronavirus for 100. Fever, chills, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell. What is stay at home and isolate? Correct. Coronavirus for 200. Inability to stay awake, persistent pain or pressure in chest, trouble breathing. What is seek immediate help? Correct.
Coronavirus for 500.
Crippling and potentially dead infectious disease eliminated the United States with vaccination.
What is the polio vaccine?
Correct.
I'll take coronavirus for 700.
The Daily Double! Should I take the coronavirus vaccine? Wait. Hold up. This is not a game. It's time for serious discussions. We have coronavirus vaccines, but not everyone is comfortable taking them. Here's the facts. Based on what has been proven about vaccines for other diseases, COVID-19 vaccine may help keep you from getting seriously ill, even if you do get the virus. Getting vaccinated also may protect people around, particularly those at greater risk for severe illness from COVID-19. We don't yet have all of the answers. Get informed, talk to your healthcare physician, and make the right decision for you. This is a message supported by the Washington State Department of Health.
This is Monique Lee from the Afternoons with Monique show. I'm also the owner of Seattle Love Broker, a relationship consulting and matchmaking company. Tune in every Thursday afternoon at 1 p.m. to listen to intriguing, informative, and entertaining guests share stories of their past and vision for the future of our community.
This is Mondo Bancaro from Mondo's World. We will be discussing some interesting subjects. Sometimes I might even have some guests. So please listen to my show on Rainier Avenue Radio.
High school football is back, but guess what? We need more referees. There's a constant need for qualified individuals to work our high school football game. Please consider becoming a football official. Go to pnfoa.com to sign up today. That's pnfoa.com to sign up today. This is a message brought to you by Rainier Avenue Radio App, your home for Metro High School football.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not shouting, "Badia!" at city council meetings, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
At balik po tayo sa ating programa, Fil-Am Radyo. Ako po si Kuya Bert Caoili.
Ito po si Mel Salvador. Maraming salamat po sa inyong panonood. Ay, Kuya Bert, just quickly, and this is for Auntie Dorothy. Mina Ismael said, so happy to listen and see you, Auntie Dorothy Cordova. Thank you for making sure that we Filipino-Americans will always be part of the United States history. That's from Nina Ismael, Auntie Dorothy.
Wow, thank you very much, Mirna. We really appreciate it. I'm so glad that we got Auntie Dorothy Cordova here of the Filipino-American National Historical Society. And she was starting to talk about FYA, which we will continue. But Auntie, I'd like you to meet my son. I know you've met him before, Norbert.
We've definitely met. It's good to see you again, Auntie Dorothy.
So before we go back to Auntie Dorothy's, I would say, recollection of all the histories that we have not heard about before, I'll shift right now the time to Norbert for his quick, not too long report on what happened to our Seahawks, because I know the Cordovas are also fanatics. So go ahead, Norb, it's all yours.
Okay, all right. So, hi everybody. This is Norb Caoili, NorbCam, here with the quick sports report. Start, I guess, with the main story. The Seattle Seahawks, who, as everybody knows, has been a struggle this season. The struggles continued yesterday as they played Washington football team in Washington, D.C., and on Monday Night Football, and lost another heartbreaker, 17-15. In a game that wasn't really that competitive, but it did become very exciting at the end. The bad news is this pretty much all but knocked Seattle's playoff hopes out for the year. So now the questions arise about what will happen with the Seahawks in the coming weeks in terms of, will changes be happening? Will the coach be let go? Will Russell Wilson's time in Seattle be moved on? Will he move to another team? A lot of speculation now that this season is pretty much gone to the wayside, even though we still have 6 games to play. Daniel's showing some clips here from the game. I actually want to do something different here, Daniel, as we see a little bit of the highlights of Russell Wilson scrambling there. But I actually put together, since yesterday, my dad and I, as we always do, we do our reactions to the game out of my studio here, and we do it on YouTube so people can watch our reactions to the game as they're watching the game. So I put it together just to get the spirit of what we do and what this game felt like. I put a small montage of our greatest and worst moments of the game yesterday from the perspective of my dad, Kuya Bert, and myself. So here's a little treat of what it was like to watch the game with us on YouTube yesterday. Take a look. Wilson under center, 2 receivers either side again. Motion, Lockett or Swain. Who's going to throw?
No. Come on.
Throws deep. Why do you go deep? It's wide open. Lockett to the 40, 30, 20. Down, out of bounds at the 11-yard. Okay, I take it back. I say, what were you doing? No. Yes, Russell. Here you go, Wilson in the gun. I got to score here. Wilson walks up to the line, calling protections. Trey Swain acting like he doesn't know what's going on. He takes the shotgun snap. He looks, throws. Touchdown, Seattle! Woo! You got it, Gerald Everett. And he leaps into the stand, and the Washington fan pushes him away. That was pretty funny. 2nd and 9 from the Seattle 41. Snap. They rush 3. He's going to throw deep middle. Pick it off! Jamal Adams with the interception. Woo! Yes! 11-yard line. Wilson under center. Metcalf to the left. He hasn't had a catch today, has he? Mm-hmm. Snap. He's going to play action. Wilson's got time. Throw deep. Wilson goes deep. He's got Lockett. Yes! To the 50-yard line. No flags. And that's good for another. Seahawks. First down. Wow, he and Lockett are on fire today. And Wilson's going to throw again. Watch. Wilson scrambles left. He's going to throw. Go! Collins up the field. Oh, no! We got it. Oh, no, he didn't. Oh, he fumbled. We lost the football at the 25-yard line. Washington takes the lead. 9-7. It's about to be 10-7, but it's blocked.
Go, Green!
Go! Head off to guy. Head off. Pitch it. Come on. Rasheed Green's going to take it to the house. Rasheed Green to the house. Oh, my goodness. Rasheed Green takes it to the house with a blocked extra point. Oh, my gosh. And it makes it a tie game. Instead of 10-7, it becomes a 9-9 game. Oh, it was Green. Green did it and picked it up himself. That is something you do not see very often. I don't know if that's happened at all in the NFL this year. 4th and goal from the 4. Now, Ron Rivera, what are you going to do? Shotgun, snap. He's going to throw. Play action. He rolls to the right. He's still looking. Throws. Touchdown. Whoop. They hit the ground. Hold on. Look. That should be incomplete. And Seattle should get the ball at the 4-yard line. Incomplete. There you go. Finally, they get a call right. 17-9, the score remains. With 2:19 left and no timeouts. They're going to have to go the length of the field and get a 2-point conversion in a half where they've only gotten 1 first down the entire half. Throw it. Flag? Yes! Flag! Pass interference. 3rd and 6. Ball at the 43-yard line. Wilson in the gun. 3 receivers right, 1 left. Snap. They rush 5 again. Wilson throws. DK finally makes a catch. And out of bounds at midfield. His first catch of the night is a big one. You got to get some yards now. Touchdown! Swain! Touchdown! Oh my God! 15 seconds left.
All we need is 2
Are you kidding me? 2 points. The play to force overtime.
Are they gonna run this?
Ball at the 2. Wilson in the gun.
What?
2 receivers right.
This.
2 receivers left. DJ Dallas in the backfield. Takes the snap. He's looking. Throws. Intercepted. Game over.
No, onside kick time.
We just need to get the onside kick and then get a field goal.
How about this? if we win this, I'll sell my Xbox right here and now.
Okay, who said that?
Nick and Jude.
Yeah, 0.03% chance onside kick. Here we go. One of the most exciting plays you'll ever see in the NFL. And here's the kick. We got it! We got it! At the 45-yard line of Seattle, we got the onside kick.
No way.
Oh my God! Are you kidding me? We can get a field goal to win it.
Somebody's gonna sell his thing.
What did you say about your Xbox, man? They're saying illegal formation.
What?
Oh, they're saying one of the guys had to be outside the hash mark, and because he was inside the hash, it's an illegal formation. Are you kidding me?
Stupid. One guy.
Kick number 2. Kick. Let's go! Oh, man, we almost had it. Oh, man, he almost had it. We didn't get it. It's game over. Not like we deserved this anyway. There we go. So, from the reactions of my dad and myself, I think that speaks for all of the emotions that Seahawks fans went through yesterday evening watching that game. A lot of frustration, a few moments of excitement, a very thrilling ending, but as the way the whole season has gone, falling just a bit short. So that's kind of been the Seahawks season in a nutshell. So I hope you enjoyed that. Just get a little bit of what we do when we're not at the games. We watch the games from my place, and we record our reactions, and it's a lot of fun. So so there you go. So quick other notes of worthy of discussion. Boy, it's been not a great week for Seattle sports in general. The Sounders FC lost last week in the playoffs to Real Salt Lake in a shootout 6-5, so they got knocked out of the playoffs. The Kraken did win yesterday. They beat the Buffalo Sabres 7-4. That puts them at 8-13 on the season, so they're in 7th place, basically second to last in the Pacific Division if you're a Kraken fan. So, it's their first year. They're still trying to figure things out, but it's, working its way there. For you college fans, of course, we had the Apple Cup on Friday. I'm a UW fan, as Auntie Dorothy mentioned. Graduated from the UW with my sister. Unfortunately, UW got killed by Wazoo for 40-13 in the Apple Cup in a very ugly game. And for the first time, Wazoo finally beats UW for the first time in 9 years. So the Apple Cup goes back to the Washington State Cougars. Congratulations to the Cougars, but hopefully UW can turn things around. Speaking of turning things around, UW did fire out their head coach Jimmy Lake during the season, and they hired a new coach yesterday. Kalen DeBoer is his name, and you might be wondering, who is Kalen DeBoer? Well, he's the head coach from Fresno State. 12-6 record with Fresno State Bulldogs, is now going to be the head coach of the University of Washington Huskies. Not exactly the big marquee name that I think we were hoping for, but hopefully he can turn the program around because it definitely needs some help. Finally, in some baseball news for you Mariners fans, they made a big signing. This is that off-season time where they try to get as many free agents signed to kind of bolster their rosters, and they signed a big one. They signed Cy Young pitcher Robbie Ray from the Toronto Blue Jays for a $115 million deal for 5 years. The 30-year-old left-hander went 13-7 last year with a 2.84 ERA, and they're not done yet. They've got another day or so to try to get a few more big splash free agent signings, and this is supposed to be the year that the Mariners take it deep into the playoffs, hopefully in 2022. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. So that's kind of it. A little bit of bad news, but a little bit of hope for the future, at least in some of our other sports teams. And that is my sports report. Thank you very much, you guys.
Okay, well, there's Miles. Miles, with that. Yeah, go ahead, Miles.
Yeah, Norb, Irving Mendoza said, "Hi, Norb. It's so sad that the Seahawks couldn't pull the game out last night against Washington football team. Do you think they should replace Ken Norton Jr. with a new defensive coach to shake things up? And it seems the whole team is out of sync this year, even with the new offensive coach. What do you think?"
What do I think? I think this may be early to say, but it may be time to change out the entire coaching staff, including Pete Carroll.
Oh, no.
Maybe start the whole thing up. And I still feel like Russell Wilson has got great years ahead of him, but for whatever reason, the chemistry of the team is not working out. So I don't know. We'll see. It's just something's got to change. And we've tried different coordinators. It hasn't changed a thing. And Pete Carroll doesn't seem to have answers for this team. So I don't know. Maybe that's where they got to look, but something's got to change. Because I can't see Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll both being on the team next year the way that this is going. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Got six more games to think about it. But
What my comment was that I noticed that ever since Pete Carroll celebrated his birthday, I don't know how many now, but
70. I think he turned
that's it.
70.
70 years old or something, and nothing has improved ever since. Anyway, Auntie, before we go back to you, let's just play this very short video that Norb normally does, but this is an old one, but it's again the title of that parody, Miles.
It's Seahawks versus Packers music video prediction. Parody of Return of the Mac by Mark Morrison. Thank you.
Oh, that was from last week or 2 weeks ago's game. Another loss, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's a short one. Let's go, Daniel.
So, yes, I did the Aaron Rodgers show. That show, he claimed he wanted out. What the F, but guess who's back in town? He lied to me. All those times he said he was leaving a drama queen. Yes, I cried. They turned up the planet. He's so upset. Come out to vortex. Oh my God. And now we're getting stressed. We'll lose to the plan. Once again, how many is that? Too many. Damn, boy, just can't win. So bad that I was trying to.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Or short and sour, maybe is a better way to put it. Not been good for the team.
I know that the Cordovas are, Seahawks fanatics too, just like you and I, Norb.
Yeah.
Well, of course, there's Seattle fixtures here, so I know that they've grown up with the Seahawks since the beginning days when they weren't very good, and seeing them go from bad to good to great to now we're kind of looking bad again. So it's kind of the nature of sports.
Oh, wow. Look at what Mira Ismail is saying.
Uncle Fred Cordova is
very happy
not very happy. Yeah. A sad season for Seahawks. Uncle Fred's favorite team.
That's right.
That's right. And Andy, I noticed that when Norbert said that, we should replace or get rid of Pete Carroll, you cannot twins. You kind of reacted to it, What do you think?
Well, Fred loved the Seahawks, and he was a deacon at our church. So at the end of every mass, he would say to the congregation, "Go Seahawks," and pray for them. So Fred dies. At his funeral, we have this event, and the Pamisa after the funeral, and my grandsons have these great big screens set up at the hub, and the Seahawks won, and they went on to win the championship. Yeah. And everybody was saying, maybe Fred should die again. I mean, I don't know. Pray for it. But no, I would love to see Pete Carroll stay at least one more year. Being old ain't so bad.
Right.
Yeah. I don't
it was a bad year. The pandemic.
I don't think that Norbert really meant that, though.
Yeah, I don't know about the offense. Yeah.
Well, still trying to figure things out, but it's a tough one because there's no easy solutions on this one. So it's hard to say, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, just to say, and then everything. I mean, there was a time when we were winning everything. All the teams were winning. Okay, so like you say, the ups and downs.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there'll be brighter days ahead eventually. It's just sometimes you got to weather the storm and you come out the other side, and then you're more appreciative when things get good again. But we've been pretty spoiled having a team that's been in the playoffs almost every year. So this is kind of uncharted territory for a lot of the new fans who've only been following the team for the past 9 years or so, 9-10 years. So it's going to happen eventually.
I went to Seattle U at a time when Seattle University was the basketball team to watch. It isn't now. So I can understand the ups and downs and everything else like that. I don't know.
Yeah. But if you guys are still interested in football, don't forget, it's streaming right now on our program, the WIAA State 3A State Championship Football. this coming Saturday at the Sparks Stadium right
Oh.
now on Saturday, and that's number 1 Bellevue versus number 6 Kennewick. So I haven't watched any of those games, but if you guys are interested, it's right now on the screen. Kennewick versus Bellevue, Saturday, December 4 at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So good luck. But a lot of our listeners and followers, they also watch Metro League football, which is also quite interesting.
That should be a good game. Bellevue is a very good running team, and I don't know that much about Kennewick, but Bellevue has always had a really good, sneaky, hard to defend running game. So we'll see if how those two teams go. But yeah, it should be a good match.
Okay, let's go back to Auntie because she's got a lot of memories, a lot of things that she could let our all Filipinos, Filipino-Americans know. And that's including me and maybe Norbert too.
Yeah,
But
you.
I know that you were starting to talk about the Filipino Youth Activities. They're very, very well known.
Yeah, that's how I met your family. And it was in the room that I'm sitting in right now is where I met your family.
I think
You
so.
brought your children to participate in one of the FYA spelling bees.
I was going to say, I remember the spelling bee.
I remember
Yes.
that. I remember a lot about a lot of people.
You remember that? My
And I
wife
think Rob,
mentioned that.
if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. And it was your mom's uncle who brought you there. And just a sidebar on your uncle, when we started FANHS, he was at my house while we were developing the concept for FANHS, and he signed off as one of the founders of the Filipino-American National Historical Society. And your uncle, who brought you to the spelling bee, was well known in the Filipino community here in the late 20s. He was an instructor at the University of Washington. So all the Filipinos called him Professor Rustia.
Mm-hmm.
And he was well known. He was an extraordinary man. And I think this is what a lot of people forget. So many of the people who came at that time, they were rather extraordinary. They were very, when you consider the fact that they would leave their country at a time when there wasn't that much immigration coming from the East, well, the Japanese were coming, they were going to Hawaii, and the Chinese, and, the Chinese were here earlier. But your uncle was I guess he worked for the government, the Philippine government, and his story really should be told, and it would be up to your family to do it. But anyway, when I was talking about the FYA, well, we tried to teach your kids to be proud Americans, but also not to forget that they were Filipino. So I taught folk dancing for several years, and we even had classes in Tagalog, and then because there's so many Ilocanos here, Ilocano too, but we taught them all the different, as much as we could. And what's interesting, we were all American, and we were trying to do these things, teach our kids to be proud Filipinos and proud Americans. And my husband Fred started the drill team. And all the commands on they wore Muslim, the girls wore Muslim outfits, and the boys were pseudo-Muslim outfits. Mm-hmm. But the commands were all in different Filipino dialects, actually counting to 10 in different dialects. We were not giving the whole thing. And all the commands had pseudo things. So it was like a pseudo-Filipino drill team. But everybody on the parade routes would always think, here come the Filipinos, because they had all these beats going. And it was a case where we were out there, and the whole purpose, not the whole purpose, but one of the things that was very important to my husband and to the kids on the team is that they would win the parades. And for years, they always won the parade.
They always did. Yeah.
It raised the image of Filipinos, not only in Seattle, but we went to all these little towns around the state of Washington. Eventually, we traveled into Oregon and to California, and even went to Hawaii and DC. And people were, what are those kids? What are they saying? what are they talking? What are they saying? The kids didn't even know either. But we were saying all these. They would bow, and do the Muslim salute. And so there was just one way. But what happened was, when you were talking about FANHS, that was Fred and I during the 50s, the 60s, with the FYA into the 70s. And then in the 70s, I started to work. Finally, FYA was my volunteer work. And I got hired to do research on Asian Americans. And somewhere along the way, I was taught to do something. I was asked to do oral history project on Filipinos in the state of Washington. And so I was taught how to do oral history. And we had a team that I pushed through the FYA. And what came out, we were interviewing the old timers. And I would ask them questions. We would have them, I developed the questions, and the people would say, why are you asking us? We're nobody. And I said, no. You're important. You're the base. You're the foundation of who we are here. And as the information came out based on the question you were asking them, we learned a lot. The state wanted me just to interview Filipinos who went to Alaska and worked in the fields. And I said, there's more to them than that. And they didn't want any women because they said women weren't allowed to come. And I said, well, yeah, they were. I mean, I was born here. I mean, my mother had to be here, and my sister-in-laws were born in Hawaii in 1910. So women were here. So anyway, one of the first, after we asked the people, where did you come from? Why did you come? Most of the people we interviewed, at least here in the state of Washington, said, I came to go to school. It just blew the cover. But then most of them came during the Great Depression, around the time of the Great Depression. If they came in the 20s, there's still hope. But by 1929, there were no jobs. They were competing for jobs. And so many of the men stopped going to school. And if they did go to school, it was maybe 10 years. They'd take a quarter and then another quarter next year, and on and on. But those people were the ones who developed the foundation of what is now the Filipino community of Seattle. They were, to me, they were heroines. And, the other thing, too, that we always forget is how many Filipinos in the United States or old families have a U.S. Navy base. Because by the early 1900s, the Philippines was now the source of recruitment in the Far East for people to be in the United States Navy. So when we started, what happened is after I learned to do oral history, eventually I wrote a grant to do oral histories around the whole country, not only just on Filipinos, but Koreans, because I was doing Asian American research. And as we went around the country, it was a 2-year project. We learned so much. We understood there was so much that we didn't know. I was truly ignorant. We had Marina Espina doing the Louisiana oral histories, which had started already. People in New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., all through California, Alaska, Hawaii. And we only had 2 years to do this. And by the time my grant was over, there was no more money. Things had changed in DC. There was no more money now for what they called minority research. And I had all this information. So I said, I'm going to do this. Maybe we should start a historical society, because we already had a base of people throughout the country. So we called it, and your uncle was one of the people who sat in on this. We called it the Filipino-American National Historical Society. This was back in 1982. So we started little by little, and we used what we had as a base here in this office. And over the years, we kept adding more and more chapters, and we were doing different things. We did a journal. We had conferences which started in 1987. Next year, we're having our 17th national conference at Seattle University.
Okay, Auntie, let me interrupt you again. because we have to go to our final news break. Okay, so just hang in there. It's really interesting. Kayo po mga nanonood, wag po kayong umalis. Just stay tuned po as we go to our news break. So, Daniel,
Yeah, stay
This is Paul
tuned.
Pearson,
Yeah.
host of Star Time. And when I'm not meeting Mrs. Jones in that cafe for a chat and nothing else, I'm listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
Atlantic Street Center has been serving the children, youth, and families of the Seattle King County area since 1910. We partner with families and communities to raise healthy, successful children and youth through services including counseling, early learning, youth development, domestic violence, and education support for school-aged children. Committed to serving the African American community, Atlantic Street Center provides services and support for all marginalized people. Learn more at AtlanticStreetCenter.org.
Hi, I'm Mac McGregor, the host of the You Can Make a Difference show, which airs live every Friday at 12 noon PT time. On the You Can Make a Difference show, we shine a spotlight on people who are doing amazing things to make a positive difference in our communities and in our world. We talk about what inspired them to do their work and what inspires them to keep going, how they got their start, and how you can, if it inspires you, plug into their work. We can all do something that makes a difference. So tune in every Friday at noon to the You Can Make a Difference show with Mac McGregor.
We got the feeling now.
R&B, soul, funk, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We give you all that and more on Star Time. Join me, Paul Pearson, for a 2-hour trip through the history of R&B. A new episode every week on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Come and get the feeling on Star Time on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
And welcome to our live studio audience for another exciting edition of Did You Know? And here we go with round one. Did you know?
COVID vaccine is free and easy to get. You don't need insurance or an appointment to get your vaccine. Vaccines are available at many locations near you.
And now we're going to double the value. Did you know?
The COVID-19 vaccine is always free of cost. You can visit pharmacies, community health centers, and other health providers in your neighborhood.
And now for the lightning round. Did you know?
The Delta variant of COVID is a mutation that has health experts worried because it's twice as contagious.
Then for our finale. Did you know?
The best way to protect yourself from the COVID Delta variant is to get fully vaccinated. Get your vaccine today.
Find out more at kingcounty.gov/vaccine.
Did
you know?
You're listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and on Twitter at Rainier Av Radio.
At balik po tayo sa ating programa, Fil-Am Radyo. Ako po si Kuya Bert Caoili.
Ito po si Mel Salvador. Maraming salamat po sa inyong patuloy na panonood sa aming programa, Fil-Am Radio Show.
Your turn,
And
Norb.
this is Norbert Caoili, also known as NorbCam, here to talk about sports.
And our very special guest today, Auntie. That's Auntie Dorothy Cordova of FANHS. You know, Auntie, the FYA has really been, well known all over. They always have performed in many of the activities all over the state. And it's just too bad that this pandemic has occurred because I miss their performances. They're very, very good, whether it's in Pista Sanayon or in the Cell Center. They were good, and like any organization, they have different people who have been doing different, I would say, performances, and they seem to have improved every year from the first time that I've seen them perform. And I know it's still alive and well, isn't it? Except that they could not perform because of this pandemic, right, Auntie?
Well,
anyway, I know you were talking about our Filipino-American National Historical Society, which now many people may not know, but there is a museum.
Yes.
In what, Stockholm? You want to talk a little about that one, maybe?
Yeah, and the reason we chose Stockton was in old Filipino-American history. That was like the Mecca in the valley, especially for the people who worked in the farms. They didn't call it farms down there so much as they were the camps. And so we have a museum there, but we have now 40 chapters around the country. And I think what's really rather interesting is many of the people who have started new chapters are those their family came to the United States after 1965 when your family came. Mm-hmm. And you know, Bert, you are very historical too, because you came during the time that Boeing was the biggest aerospace company in the world. And the big thing was they hired, and that was what word had gone out, they hired 1,000 Filipino engineers. And then there was that big drop. Aerospace business started to decline.
Yep.
And here in Seattle, we were always busy watching the news that said Boeing's laying off 10,000 workers, 5,000 workers. And everybody I knew at one time, every family here in Seattle and, you know, elsewhere had a relative who worked at Boeing's. And we were wondering about the new young families who are engineering families who came over. We were crossing our fingers. It was a case of last to be hired, first to be fired. And what's unique about you is you were one of the handful of that 1,000 who came. Boeing, we kept there. And I know so many of your colleagues went off. Some stopped being engineers. Some of them went elsewhere to continue in the field that they were trained for. And, you know, there's a time when I keep telling the people in FANHS, we should interview people who were part of a historic, what we do, which you have to understand, we do Filipino-American history. We talk about what's happening here in the United States and how it impacted Filipinos who are part of that particular thing. So when World War II occurred, in 1941, there were 50,000 Filipinos living here in the United States. We weren't all in the Philippines. And so what a lot of people don't understand, it's muddied. There were over 7,000 Filipinos who joined the U.S. Army's 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry. And part of the history that we're trying to prove is that a number of these men were specially trained during the 1942 to do different things, like setting up radio lines to Australia to connect with MacArthur's headquarters there. They were commandos. Actually, they were taught to kill if they were found, because they were sent by submarine during the early 1943 to set up camps or to contact the guerrillas and to prepare for the coming of MacArthur in 1944. This is completely lost in American history. They don't mention this at all. And the thing that's interesting, what FANHS has is an archives. And one of the things that started the archives were boxes that we found in a basement of Julius Ruiz, who was an old newspaper man here in Seattle. Mm-hmm. He graduated in journalism from UW, and he was part of the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry. And because he was a journalist, he kept records. And in his basement were records from the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry. Many of them were handwritten, typewritten, almost 100 personal accounts of Filipinos who served during the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry, from training to going to Australia, then to the Philippines, and afterwards. And the documents are really something. Around a year and a half ago, I pulled them out, and I saw some of the notations made by other researchers. And one that really struck me was one guy wrote down, "This would make a good movie." And I thought, oh my God, I better read these things again. All over the United States, there are vestiges of documents left by old timers. You know, one of the reasons we started FANHS is at the time I started to push it, the immigration from the Philippines was greater than any other Asian country. At that time, during the 70s, early 80s, during the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, Filipinos were the second only to Mexico coming into the United States. Yet there was relatively very little written about us, just Carlos Belusa's book. And then Carlos's book, as beautiful as things are written, never mentions women. Only says they went to Alaska and worked in the fields. Didn't mention the Navy. Didn't mention the men going to college. Didn't mention the families. He wasn't writing history. He wrote a beautiful book. And so it was really important, once we started to collect the oral histories, it was important for us to really push the fact that we have been here. And believe it or not, in one way or another, we did things that were really extraordinary. People look at, at the end of the last century, they had a thing on TV, a countdown, the most popular toys in the United States during the 20th century. You know what was the top toy in the 20th century? It was a yo-yo. My God. It was because this guy, Duncan, saw this Filipino on the street playing with his toy. And he then hired all these Filipino men who went around the country. This is before TV and everything. Everybody was listed as the champion Filipino yo-yo guy. They go to all these places. They went to South America. They went to Europe. They were Filipinos who were introducing a toy from the Philippines. Who knows that?
Wow.
The Filipino, musicians. Your son's a musician. There were Filipinos playing in bands all over, not just, they played in Lawrence Welk's band. They were playing with Dizzy Gillespie. There were people out there. There's lots of history. There's a guy who was a salsa king in a long time ago, and what do we know? And so that's why we started FANHS. We wanted to show that we were part of the United States. We were all kinds of people. We were, been here a long time.
Yeah. You know what, Norb? I'm inspired by this FANHS information. Maybe we could make a documentary about FANHS and our history. Is that not
do a documentary on more people like you, say, for example. When I started to do my oral histories, I was interviewing people. So I started in the 1970s. I was doing people who came in the 20s. That's 50 years. Now, you consider you came more than 50 years ago.
53, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's interesting. Your history is different from my parents' history. And all over the country.
Yeah, we were luckier.
You guys have spread all over. You guys made it into mainstream where my parents couldn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
But was all your journeys wonderful? We don't know. People like us who ask dogged questions. Sure, maybe I'll try to get some of these things. But there's information out there. We're interesting people. I've always said when I was doing Asian American research, we were the Technicolor people. The others are more pastel shades. We had the boxers, We even had basketball players. We had baseball players. But people didn't know.
You had football players too.
We had Doug. Yeah, we had Doug. And there were others. There was around 2 weeks ago, one of my grandsons called me up and he said, Grandma, you got to see this. This guy's announcing, he said, for the first time in basketball history, you have two Filipinos playing on opposite teams. And that was in the NBA. And I thought, oh my God. The guy even knew it was during Filipino-American History Month. And that's one thing that FANHS has pushed the last 10 or 12, 15 years. Filipino-American History Month. Not so much Heritage Month. Heritage is part of it. What we have done historically, that's of some significance. And the thing that I always say, if there was a war, we weren't just out, in a bubble way across there. We were participating in what was happening here. When your kids went to UW, they didn't just have the Filipinos in a corner. No, you went to class with everybody. And when you were going, there wasn't a Filipino section. You were part of the group.
Yes.
I mean, that's what we're trying to
That's the
figure
difference.
out.
Yeah.
We were here and we were part of the scene, but we were invisible.
That's true.
People, yeah. And what really bothered me, because when I was doing Asian research, by the time 1975 comes on, everybody knows now the Vietnamese, and they forget about the Filipinos. That's when I started to say, okay, now's the time to push ourselves.
I agree. Now, you have your anniversary here, or
Yeah,
a big
we'll be
meeting
40
next
years.
year?
Next year, we're celebrating in Seattle because this is where it started. And
Yes,
I'm
I
inviting
want to make
you.
sure that I will be able to attend or participate, whatever.
I know. And even we're thinking we would love, hopefully by then we can meet. We're already setting it up. It could be hybrid, but I think in a way there could be social justice, but there's a lot of stories to be told yet. I would love to have a section just on musicians. It would be great. There are many music stories. Right now I'm in the process of moving my office from upstairs to downstairs. So I have to clear 2 rooms to put into 1 room. I'm going through every file, and the research that I forgot about is really something. We found musicians in Chicago and everywhere, and I'd love to. There's just so much that can be done. And, like I say, I'm pushing 90 and I'm thinking,
I thought we were
I hope
just the
somebody
same
as
age.
curious as me,
Auntie, I thought we were the same age. 80. But I didn't
How old are
realize.
you?
I'm
Yeah.
going to be 82 in December.
81,
82.
90. You?
82 in December.
Hey, you're young. Yeah. You're like my younger. No. What's really sad? My generation's dying.
Hey,
And
that's,
so we're the generation who lived through the Great Depression, the wars, World War II. And a lot of times we've neglected to interview us. And the thing is, we were interviewing about our parents, but never about us, who were the first group to become American. We were, when I think about it, we were really a unique group. We were the first Americans.
yeah, true.
Yeah.
How true.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's a lot of things to do, but so little time.
Yeah, it's just like Miles. She could do it and interview the first Australians.
Yeah.
It really would be.
In fact, Miles has done a good job interviewing and having as guests on our show some of the
All over the world.
Filipino Australians or Filipinos who have been,
Yeah.
in Australia and doing
Yeah.
concerts and stuff like that. That's a good idea, Miles. Yeah,
Yeah.
you might want to do that. And also, Auntie, I have some stuff that I would sure like to bring to your office. Some of, documents, information about Filipino community of Seattle and stuff like that. you know. So you're still located at the Immaculate Conception
Oh
area?
yeah. I'll probably die here in this off. You know, I went to school in this, I went to school in this building. It was funny during World War II. I went to a Maryknoll, the Maryknoll Order, and they were. If the school was for the children of immigrants from Japan and the Philippines. So when the war broke out, the Japanese were sent to camp. But they constituted 90% of the school. So all the Filipino kids came 6 blocks away to this school. And among them was people like Bob Santos.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of, So we were here. What was really interesting is because of, remember I was talking about the dynamics and about everything that happened. We were actually, many of us who grew up there and came out of Maryknoll and went to Immaculate became the vanguard here in Seattle of civil rights, of Filipino civil rights. And again, part of American history. And what I'm trying to say, and it's really important for me to say this, is that it's really important for people to understand that wherever we are part. You know what was interesting? I went to a meeting in my first and only time in Europe. I went to the Vatican. It was the canonization of the first Filipino saint. And I looked around and I saw, oh my God, there were signs that said Filipinos from Spain, España, and, from everywhere. And I thought for the first time, Filipinos are everywhere. They were everywhere. I've met Filipinos that I'm going to interview maybe next month who came to the United States via Africa. They were teaching in Africa. I mean,
they were world travelers. Filipinos are.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, we've had some guests interviewed who lives in Hawaii and not Hawaii, Italy. So all over.
We were everywhere.
And that reminds me, just like the Seahawks, when we were in London, there were so many Seahawks fanatics all over the world, and that's the same thing with the Filipinos. They're all over the world, But you know what, Auntie? I know our time really has gone too fast. It's not enough to listen to.
No, it's
all of
very
the stories.
interesting.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm really into this now. We have to do this again, Miles.
Well, actually, it's your story. What would be really interesting is to bring your peers in.
Yes.
And to ask them stories about themselves. Like, I mean, Norbert, you were born in the Philippines, but you were a baby. You were young. And
no, Norbert wasn't. Monica was.
Monica. So then
I was born right after they
like
arrived here to the States.
Yeah. You were like me then. You were born here.
And
so
just like you couldn't speak Tagalog.
I got to tell you, this is something that always bothered me. So when in the 30s, because I was born here, my mom would say, you're an American, but she never let me forget I was Filipino. So I'd go out there, and there were very few Filipinas in those days, and people would say to me, "What are you?" And I said, "I'm an American." "No, you're not. You don't look American." This is back in the 30s, the early 40s. Okay, so fast forward. I told you we had a tight community. Everybody loved each other. After the war, more people came in, and then they'd speak to me in Tagalog, and I'd say, "I'm sorry, I don't speak Tagalog." Then you're not Filipino. I'd say, "But my mother doesn't speak Tagalog either. She's Filipino." I was really confused. So anyway, I was thinking, okay, what am I? I'm not American for some people. I wasn't Filipino for other people. We're Filipino-American.
Right.
And then I really found out the difference. Fred and I finally made it to the Philippines in 1996. We're over 60. And guess what happened? We were supposed to lecture in universities. Fred could speak Tagalog because he couldn't speak English. So he was So we went to kindergarten because he lived on the camp. They were migrant workers. And so he could speak Tagalog, he could speak Visayan. So we're giving lectures and they heard my accent. They taught me how to say good morning. Magandang umaga po. But I said it really bad. And they would all laugh and they say, oh my God, she's Kano. I said, Kano.
Oh my goodness, Kuya Bert. Daniel is giving
I thought I was
us
going
the
back to my
sign.
homeland.
So, Auntie, this has been a very, very interesting, very
Yeah.
entertaining talk with you. But we are out of time.
Daniel
We
is
have
giving the
Look at the
sign.
background.
Yeah.
Look at the background. We're gonna say our goodbyes now. We'll try to do it again sometime. Anyway, mga kaibigan, dumating na sandali ng pamamaal. As to say our goodbyes. First of all, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you very much to Dorothy of FANHS, Filipino-American National Historical Society. And thank you, of course, to Norb and Miles. So go ahead, Miles. Say goodbye now.
Ito po si Mal Salvador. Ako yung nagpapaalam pa sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat, Auntie Dorothy Cordova. Thank you. Thank you, Kuya Bert and Norb, as usual. And thank you, Danielle. And thank you, everybody, for watching our program. See you next Tuesday. Our guest next Tuesday is Elena Winsor, international singer from Australia. Basta sa Filipina. Love you all. Take care.
Okay, Norb, your turn.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Again, this is Norbert Caoili, NorbCam. Appreciate you giving me some time to talk a little bit about sports. And Seahawks fans, keep your heads up. There are brighter days ahead. But Auntie Dorothy, it's always good to see you. You look fantastic, and I can never get tired of hearing all the wealth of information and history that you know. So I hope to hear from you again. And Auntie Miles, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
And Dad, we'll be seeing each other soon. So thanks, everybody, for watching.
Your turn to say goodbye.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Okay. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat na ngayon po. As we do our closing prayer, please join us. Let's bow our head. Ama namin, purihin ang iyong pangalan. Nagpupuri po kami at nagpapasalamat sa mga dakilang biyaya, buhay, lakas, at subaybay na ipinagkaloob mo sa amin mula sa oras na ito hanggang sa wakas ng aming buhay. Amen.
Amen.
So
Happy
thank you.
53rd
See you guys all.
anniversary to Cheryl, to Bert and Ate Shoni.
Auntie Dorothy Cordova of FANHS.
Yeah, I love you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Pabayaan mo kaya masaya mga gintong araw na hinanaan. May halaga pa ba sa atin ang pag-ibig kung puso at gabi magsilamig? Pababayaan mo kaya masayang na lang mga gintong araw na hinanaan. May halaga pa ba sa atin? Rainier Avenue Radio.